Okay. Well, hi, everybody out there in Zoom land, and thank you so much for being here to honor the legacy of Aurobindo and for coming together to take a look at collective yoga and see how it might be relevant to our lives in 2022. And I thought we could start by putting collective yoga into a larger context. So let's review. Aurobindo tells us the world is preparing for a big change, the emergence of a consciousness with massive capabilities beyond analytic rationality, which, just like life and mind before it, will become active at a global level and add another rung to the evolutionary ladder. We all know this. It's just review. This new consciousness, which he calls the supramental or Gnostic consciousness, is at once transcendent, cosmic, and universal and personal. An oceanic sense that sees everything, even the greatest multiplicity, in light of a supreme oneness. So it's a stupendous power, an irresistible harmony, and a compelling force of truth and beauty, with the power to transform the world as we know it. So this world transformation will start first in individuals who, by virtue of concentrated yoga, will open to that power of transformation. But they may not be sitting by themselves, all alone in monastery cells or cabins in the woods or condos at the edge of town. Aurobindo envisions that these transformed individuals will band together and form what he calls Gnostic collectivities. And he gives a sneak preview of what it would feel like to be in such a collectivity. He says, there'll be a common uniting consciousness, a spontaneous and innate unity and harmony, an inner and direct mutual knowledge between individuals based on oneness. There'll be a consciousness of each other's being, thought, and feeling, and a direct communication of mind with mind, heart with heart, and life with life. So, I think that's just great. Yeah. And the end result, eventually, after a long and arduous yogic passage, will be an entire race of higher humanity embodying a mind of light, maybe even another species. And in a new perfected collective life, Aurobindo says, the afflictions of our terrestrial ignorance would recede in a world of supramental light, a divine life in matter. All right. Very good. But at one point, he says also that a Gnostic or supramental community can be based only on the inner realization of each of its members. So it would seem logical that before we could hope to realize a Gnostic collectivity, we'd first have to become Gnostic beings. Okay? Personal yoga would go first and collectivity would follow. So, question. Does this mean that we don't start collective yoga until we've attained Gnostic consciousness? Yeah. Well, it seems to me that an individual attains Gnostic consciousness as a result of much personal yoga. And it would also seem to me that a community of people would become a Gnostic community after much collective yoga, which, like individual spiritual practice would be a process of purification, spiritualization, and transformation, but done with others together. So to get a sense of how collective yoga fits into the historical timeline of integral yoga, let's go back to the Aurobindo ashram in what used to be called Pondicherry, India. So Aurobindo's close spiritual collaborator, Mira Alfasa, whom we endearingly know as the mother, says that in the first decades of the ashram, collective yoga didn't seem to be important. For a long time, the ashram was just a gathering of individuals united by the superficial fact of living together, each of whom were moving along, according to their own capacity, with a minimum of relations with others. Then in February 1956, Mother experienced a strong descent of supramental consciousness and force into the Earth atmosphere. And a year and a half later, so we're talking August 1957, she identified the need for a collective reality. But she said it wasn't limited to the ashram. It embraced all those trying to live the teachings of Sri Aurobindo. And she could feel it, the need for a real union, a deeper bond, a communal life, not based just on material circumstances, but representing a deeper truth. And she said it was the beginning of a Gnostic community. And she also said that the individuals she perceived in this new movement were far from yogic perfection, but that the inner effort toward collectivity had begun. There were some complaints. The emergence of a collective reality seemed to create disturbances and lowered the consciousness of those who maybe didn't care for the leveling of the playing field and felt weighted down by a load they didn't have to carry before. And in one of her talks at the ashram playground, Mother explained that the work of becoming a collective asks for a greater power, wideness, patience, tolerance, and endurance. So why would that be? She said, well, it's because in addition to your own personal difficulties, you're going to have to deal with frictions and reactions and onslaughts coming in from outside. And circumstances are always going to push you exactly on your weakest point. And whatever you'd most like not to happen is going to happen. So you might say, who needs that? Supermentalization's a long ways away. Wouldn't it be better to just drop all those collective responsibilities and problems and just deal with your own yoga? Well, unfortunately, Mother says that's not exactly an option, because there's an interdependence between the individual and the collective, and you can't free yourself from it completely, even if you try. Your own progress is always going to be held back by the state of the whole, which acts as a brake and pulls you backward. Your own realization, even if you're very advanced, is dependent on the realization of the whole. So that's why Sri Aurobindo says that a double movement is necessary. The effort for individual progress should be combined with an effort to uplift the collective. When the collective progresses, it allows the individual to take another step forward and to go farther and deeper. The collective forms a base that restrains, but it can also be a support. So the faster you go on your own, the more it's necessary to strengthen the collective. You need a balance between those two efforts. And in fact, Mother says that if you want to do integral yoga alone, it's absolutely impossible to do it in a total way, because you represent only one law of the world. You can attain your own perfection and become infinite and perfect in your own consciousness, but the external work will be limited. The realization under the conditions of the community or the group is much more complete, integral, total, and perfect than any individual realization, which is always circumscribed because it's only one mode of being, a microscopic set of vibrations. In the end, one person on their own, even an avatar, cannot realize the supramental life on Earth. A minimum number of physical beings is indispensable for the supreme truth to become concrete and manifest. Why? Mother says something very interesting here. She says it's because the divine realization obeys certain group laws in which eternal infinite being expresses itself collectively. So to say it in another way, a radical multiplicity is necessary to manifest the divine and the divine life on earth. She says, all the ways of being of the divine, all the forms of being in the manifestation are necessary to express the divine. It's this manifestation as a whole in its totality that progresses towards a growing, infinite, eternal perfection. So, it's not each separate element individually. It's all together as a collective and total expression of the divine truth. And if each element manifests it as perfectly as possible, its own law, what it should be in the whole, the utmost of what ought to be done will be done. So again, we come back to a double movement, a progress that's both individual and collective, a mutually supportive effort for individual yoga combined with a yoga that uplifts the collective. So meanwhile, here we are in 2022, and the entire world is undergoing an evolutionary crisis, just like Debashish said. Aurobindo says humanity has created a system of civilization that's too big for its limited mental, moral, and spiritual capacity to manage. And the age of mental reason and scientific materialism is coming to an end, the end of an old and failing worldview. But the higher supramental cognition has not yet established itself. And so the earth is on fire, the oceans are rising, society is unraveling. We're facing an ecological catastrophe unparalleled in human history, caused by human behavior. And we're in the middle of the 6th mass extinction. Factory farms are polluting the air and water and depleting the soil. Society is being ravaged by economic inequality, pandemics, racism, xenophobia, misogyny, toxic religion, conspiracy theories, anxiety, and alienation, and the list just goes on and on. So all these problems are in the end the result of an ignorant and untransformed lower human nature subsumed in a mental consciousness that sees things in bits and pieces and cannot grasp the underlying divine unity. Mind, unlike supermind, is inherently unable to hold multiplicity and diversity in an intimate, unified oneness. And this means conflict, clashes, and chaos. And now, as global devastation speeds up, maybe even existential ruin. So right now, our very existence depends on finding the way toward a deeper and wider truth of being. And the only solution, Aurobindo says, is a change of consciousness, and not just a private change of consciousness, but a change in collective consciousness. All right, so just for the sake of an example, let's imagine that you're out there all by yourself, working to change your consciousness and find a way to the next level of spiritual being. The collective thought form that surrounds you, and especially in the West, is by default a materialist point of view that regards the divine as a superstitious myth, or at best, a distant concern irrelevant to daily life. The collective atmosphere is filled with fake news, daily disasters, and contagious fears that the world is doomed. So remember what the mother said about how the individual is pulled back by the collective, and how a minimum number of individuals are necessary to ground and manifest higher consciousness. My conclusion is that, folks, we need our people. We can't navigate this evolutionary quantum leap alone. We need coworkers to build luminous energy fields that are receptive to the descent of power and wisdom. We need friends who understand our language, are comfortable with silence and open to intuition, who know the sweetness and light of psychic emergence and feel the oneness behind multiplicity. Because we're on a challenging journey, and sympathetic companions who can support us on the way help a lot. Furthermore, because everything in the world is interconnected in a vast and subtle spiritual ecosystem, the progress we make in our small yogic collectivities may in fact spread through underground rivers and morphic resonance into the larger whole. Shifts at a micro level can have profound effects on levels beyond. So that in my view, is the answer to the question, why collective yoga? So I'll close with a passage from Sri Aurobindo's epic poem, Savitri, that describes a consciousness we might someday realize if we set our aspiration toward it. He says, a universal vision that unites, a sympathy of nerve replying to nerve, hearing that listens to thought's inner sound and follows the rhythmic meanings of the heart, a touch that needs not hands to feel, to clasp. Were there the native means of consciousness and heightened the intimacy of soul with soul, a grand orchestra of spiritual powers, a diapason of soul interchange, harmonized to oneness, deep, immeasurable. So that's all, folks. And thank you very much, Mateo. I'll turn it back to you.